We're going to make that the pop quiz tonight and see if we get a good 100% score on that. It's wonderful to be here. I feel very blessed and fortunate. Such an easy work to brag on. And this work is not the result of any one person, and it's certainly the results not of any man's doing in terms of planning. We just are included in the Lord's work. It is His work, and you'll see that. None of us are smart enough to produce the results. There's not a business in the United States or anywhere in the world that can produce the results that this mission work has, and that's because we believe it's firmly planted in what the Lord's plans are. We are proud and humbled to have you on the team. The Hardin Church is very important to this work, not only in terms of your financial support, but in your prayers, in your scholarship for a student, Jerome, that you will see has graduated and out there. I'm going to take a step back and speak about where in the world this work is taking place, because we are to go into all the world and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. But where is this? And it started in a country called Benin, B-E-N-I-N. It's that little country right where you see it says BTC campus. And that's in French-speaking Africa. But that's where the work started with George 21 years ago under the oversight of the Benton elders. And George as a missionary is still under the oversight of the Benton elders. 2 years into the work, two of our elders went and checked up. And it went from 6 people meeting in one pew, basically couldn't have filled this pew in an apartment, to now we've got 2 churches with 100 faithful Christians in 2 years. And being the Americans we are, our elders said, well, this is great. What do we do next? And we laugh about this now, but there was some real wisdom in George's response. He said, I've got an idea what might be good next, but I'm going to ask you not to do something. And they said, what's that? Well, don't send a bunch of white Americans over here and mess this up. We're just getting started. And it boils down to not sending fish and not keep sending fish, but let's train fishermen. And so our vision with this work together is French Africans evangelizing French Africa. And our method is by training these men for 3 years. They get a 3-year degree. From essentially what would be the equivalent of a Freed-Hardeman University basically in third world country. So there's a 20-acre campus with a working farm, dormitories, classrooms, and students. The men come and live for 3 years. And their families, some come with them and some are at home. And that's where the financial support from the U.S., that's where your dollars are going. And that is where your scholarship went, is that these men cannot afford, and they wouldn't be able to pay tuition. This school, there's no such thing as government grants. There's no such thing as Pell loans. There's no financial assistance programs. The average income over there is about $2,000 a year. So that's not feasible. So in God's plan, the financial resources rest here in the U.S., but the human resources and the preaching and the ability rest with the native men. So we have all come together to make this happen. And we're going to show you that. And in the results, 182 men now have graduated from the Bible Training Center in 20 years. Their charge as they leave is to plant at least one church. Many are preaching. So Chris, if you were there, you would finish here and you would get on your moped and go 10 miles and then preach there. And then when you're there, you'd get back on your moped and go 15 miles and preach here. The church starts over here when you show up. It's over when you leave. They don't have a clock they look at. And so that's how this has grown. And 11 countries and over 300 congregations of the Lord's Church is active and faithful and worship yet this morning. Just like the only thing that you would find uncomfortable over there might be the chair you're sitting in. You'd fit right at home, and their worship and style is true, and so that's where that is. The last thing I'll touch on is the significance of this area. This is 11 countries, 16, but we're in 11, that have French as their primary language, and it's primarily West Africa. And you'll see it's almost the exact size of the United States in land. So you've got an area the size of the United States with 260 million people living in it, that up until 1993, the Lord's church had zero presence. None. And many had not been evangelized at all. It's voodoo. It's Islam. It's Catholicism. And there's no way that we could go do it. But we've been blessed with an opportunity and with an army of God's soldiers to go out and do this work. So that's what we're a part of. Africa as a continent is the #1 continent with missionaries in it, supported by the brethren. There's over 300 works going on that Churches of Christ in the U.S. are involved with in Africa. 299 of those are in English-speaking countries. Zimbabwe, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, exactly, all these that George knows. But the language barrier in French and in those local dialects. And a lot of these countries on the top 10 list of hardest places to live in terms of climate, political pressure, and age expectancy, I think 7 of the top 10 are in West Africa. So we couldn't do it. I looked long and hard and I couldn't find the verses that said, go into most of the world except for these countries and preach. So that's our opportunity, that's our results. And what's cool about it, and I don't mind saying that we're a hit church in Kentucky, because I'm from Benton, and we can say that and be proud of it, just like y'all could, because God does big things through small people and His people. And so to put that in perspective, there's 260 million people who are being evangelized by preachers who have been trained. Churches are flourishing. The Lord's church is growing. There's baptisms every day. And if it wasn't for a group of churches in western Kentucky, and now some as far as Texas and Maryland that have gotten involved in this work, if it wasn't for this work, it would not take place. So that's when I say this. There's no one that could have this results. This is God's work that we're thankful to be included in. We want to show you the fruits of that to your account, and ask you to stay encouraged in this and involved in this with your prayers and your support. One last thing I'll touch on before our slideshow. Well, you can see as our church growth has taken place, the school opened up in '95. But as this work has grown, the Benton elders oversaw this school. They still hold the deed to the property of the school and are still the Benton church is very engaged in this. It got to where every elders meeting, they would start with, okay, let's talk about the work in Benin and in West Africa. And the bell would ring before they were done with even that. Could never just really do church business. It went from one missionary to a couple things to a 20-acre campus. So in 2007, the elders said, and working together, said, let's form a nonprofit that has a board of trustees, just like a university would have, that would help oversee the curriculum, the finances, the day-to-day operations of this. The Benton elders are still actively engaged in it. George is under their oversight as a missionary, but his day job is to be the director of this school. And so our board meets twice a year. We're meeting next week at the Benton Church, and we've had some new elders come on there. One of them is going to come on. Dr. Milton Sewell, the Chancellor Freed Hardeman, serves on the board. We've got a couple elders and ministers from different parts, and retired two-star General Paul Johnson from the U.S. Air Force, who just retired from the Pentagon. He was over all of the Air Force operations in Afghanistan, and it was a pilot for the A-10 Warthog. So he was probably regarded as one of the best pilots to ever fly that. He just retired and is now fully engaged in this, and will be serving in a chairmanship role for FACE. So it's a little confusing, but we're all working together in the same team. There's a lot of eyeballs on this in terms of operating it and in terms of making sure that the curriculum and what is taught and what is preached is the truth and is biblically sound. So just wanted to touch on that piece. And I believe we have, well, here's a picture of campus, and if our slideshow works, this will be kind of a year in pictures. So what you'll see is over the 2017, our Bible distribution campaign that started last year, some of the church construction assistants that started, and some things in the school. If it works, do you think, is it going to play? We can try. If it does, that's what it is. If it doesn't work, we can continue on the PowerPoint. And the white guy from Kentucky is going to take a seat so our guest can speak. Here we go.
These pictures we are seeing here is our graduation. This is our students in the classroom. This guy just graduated and he's just so excited. These are some of our graduates, our staff, as you see in the pictures. That's when David was with us in Benin. There is the certificate that we give them when they finish school. Our baptisms. There's one church in the village. They took this picture after worship. These are two of our graduates. One will preach in one dialect, the other will translate to another dialect. We baptize anywhere, we worship anywhere, under trees, in school classrooms. This one, there was no water, so they have to create a mud hole and pump water into it and baptize. Not too long ago, we got a bus from David Taylor. He donated a bus to our work that we converted to what we call the gospel chariot. It was yellow, but we painted it red. And we had a PA system, a generator, chairs, a tent. And when we go out to the villages, we turn on these generators. The lights just attract the people like flies attract light, you know. And they come in there in the evening, and we are in business, teaching them the Word of God. As you see in some of the pictures that are turning on, are rolling. This class graduated a year ago. There's some of the people who enjoy the Bibles that you sent or you help us purchase. We stamp every Bible with the label not to be sold. And then we put the preacher's name and address as a contact so that anybody who sees that Bible can know who gave it. Yeah, when Kendall came, we presented these Bibles to one of the preachers, and it was a wonderful experience for them. Normally they get 6, but when Kendall came, he was giving out in boxes, in cases. This is in Chad, where they have 50% of the population being Muslims. But when we give them Bibles, they take it. That's a shoulder reader trying to read a Bible. These are people with new Bibles. Some had never had Bibles. This is the first time they were being given Bibles. There's a moped loaded with Bibles. They will study the Bible in the dark. It's a baptism. You can see the attention that people give to reading the Bibles. You know, they've been wanting one for so long. So when they get it, it's a treasure. They value it as much as they can. So we don't just hand over the Bibles, we make sure we study the Bibles together. So this group, like you see them in the pictures, when they receive the Bibles, we'll discuss a lesson in the Bible and said, next time you are coming, bring your Bibles. This is a part of the construction of the new churches that we are putting up in Benin. We make the bricks in the mold, and before you know, they've mounted it. The building is out of the ground. This is where we went to baptize a group. There's a building construction going on here. The methods of building are very crude, but they get the job done. These are our preachers on their mopeds, ready to go out. These are our graduates with visitors from the United States. I want to thank you so much for having me here and having me back as we share with you what the Lord is doing in West Africa. We want to begin with the passage from Romans chapter 10, verses 14 to 15, which says, "How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? How shall they believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things." Many people might read this passage and not get anything out of it. But for us, it's a passage that is very real, it's reality, because we go to villages in my part of the world, and they tell us, "Why are you now coming? Why are you now coming?" Because they've already given their lives to several things that they do not want to leave. Some have gone into idol worship, some have gone into Islam, some have gone into denominations, and now that we are teaching them the truth, they said, "We are coming too late." Simply, there was nobody to teach them. We had people who were baptized who have never been a member of any church. The first time we were hearing the gospel was from our preachers. We were at the New Concord Church this morning, and they are looking for a preacher. And I was telling them if it is in Benin, they won't get any because there are no preachers. Churches come to me and said, send us preachers. We don't have them. The field is white for harvesting, but there are no people to go and do the harvest. Like David said, 250 million people. Sometimes I want to explode and be everywhere at the same time. And training them is a very slow process. But if we want to do it right, we got to do it the best way that we can. We can't just mass produce them. It takes 3 years to turn out a good preacher. And when we send out a preacher, he goes to a village, he's being called all over the places. Every village is calling him to come and teach and minister to them. And we can't say no. So, like David said during the introduction, if I go to visit some preachers and I don't have breakfast before I step in there, there's no breakfast, there's no lunch. We just keep going from one place to the other. These people who work with me are doing something that is unique. I'll give you the 217 updates. Okay. And this picture that you see is a crowd at our graduation. I went to Benin. I left Ghana. I went to Benin in 1992 with my wife, my son, and one other man. We were 4. The first Sunday, I was preaching to myself. We have only one woman and one man. But today, look at the number of people in the picture here who gathered for our graduation. It's just amazing. In 20 years' time. The picture you see here, there is a little map of Africa with a portion that is painted green. That's our constituency. That's the area that we want to reach with the gospel. The men in yellow are our graduates. They came for an alumni meeting. We are not here to ask for salaries for these men. During training, we ask them to learn a trade. They learn to repair cell phones made in China. They break down very easily. So we train our men how to repair cell phones. We teach them how to sew. We teach them how to raise crops, how to raise animals. We even started teaching them how to repair computers so that wherever they go, they're able to do some business and take care of their families. So that's what we are doing. Like this church sponsored Jerome. When he graduated, he opened a cell phone repair shop. And that's what he does. In the pictures you see here, we are stamping our Bibles before we give them out. Yes, this is the gospel chariot. When we drove it away from Mr. David Taylor's shop, it was yellow. But we painted it red, and we put in a PA and a lighting system, 50 chairs, plastic chairs, and a huge tent. And the men you see in the picture, they are the gospel chariot team. They manage and operate the chariot. When the chariot goes to any village, they create a problem for me, a good problem, because when they get there, they baptize people, and they call me and say, send a preacher. And I don't have the preachers. So we keep rotating the men that we have in doing this work. We baptize them in groups, like you can see in these pictures. These people standing before the preachers were ready to be baptized. And we take their confessions before we baptize them, as you see in these pictures here. Yeah, this is the guest house that was constructed in honor of Aaron Morgan. If you visit us in Benin, you have a very nice accommodation. It's finished. We've got the windows in there, as you see in the background. His son, Brandon Morgan, came to dedicate this building. It has air conditioning. It's got hot water in the bathrooms. And everything works in that building. If you come in there, you enjoy it. It has a small kitchen with a microwave, a fridge, and we make it for people to feel at home. So right now we are waiting for guests. Okay. This picture was taken when we have visitors, Brother Kendall and Brother Brandon. This is the church that meets on our school compound. This is the Campus Church of Christ. We have about 100 people meeting every Sunday. People from the neighborhood come to worship on our school compound. Okay. This mud house is a church building. You might not believe it. This is where a church meets, and this is the inside of the church building. Those mounds you see there, that is the furniture that is sit on. And it can be hot, actually hot. My wife cannot stay in there. She would prefer going out than stay in there, because when you get in there with maybe 50 people in a room for 20, standing elbow to elbow, you cannot breathe. And we took Kendall in there for him to enjoy. This is a tin roof that we put up for one church. In the area there, this is better than what others had. See the poles upon which the people are sitting, the sticks. That's church furniture. That's when we go to church, you can see Brandon sitting on one. You might not be able to sit on that thing for 5 minutes. But we preach 1 hour sermons with people sitting in there. And they say, give us more. They just keep absorbing it and said, give us more. You know, they can't get enough of it. This is another worship facility. Doesn't look like it. When we went there in February of this year, we baptized about 85 people. And then we sent them home. When we came back, this is what they did. They were farmers. When they cut the corn, they don't burn the husk. Is that the husk or the stalk? Okay. In French, you call it tige. So they tie that up on poles to provide them some shade under which to worship. And when you are coming, you bring your own furniture. This area we were thinking will be controlled by the Muslims. But when we got in there were no Muslims, there were no Christians. The Catholics are everywhere, but this area is so depraved, is that it? Poor, that they will not even go there. They will not even go there. But we are there, teaching them the gospel. We visited one of the churches that donated this property to the Churches of Christ in Benin. And we took Brandon and Kendall to go and see it because we want to put up a building on this property. I don't know if you can see this very well. Yeah, you can. This is not Houston, it's Benin. The Sunday morning we went to worship with this church, there was a big rain and the whole place was just flooded. They've got to put sand in there to enable us enter the building. And when the time to worship came, look at it, it was filled up. More than 100 people coming there to worship. The floor was wet and it's sand, it's sandy floor, but we just stayed in there, had a wonderful worship. Where I showed you in the slide people with a corn stalk for the meeting. The building in the foreground is being put up for them. And when Kendall and Brandon went in there, they were received like rock stars with singing and joy, because they did not expect it. They did that kind of love that people wanted to help them worship God in a more comfortable situation. They did not expect it. These are the women walking after our visitors, and they were singing and praising God for that. This young man you have here is called Jonas. He is preaching for 5 congregations. He's in between 5 congregations. But what he does is, on a Wednesday, he gathers 5 people from these churches and teach them the lesson that they are supposed to teach. So he teaches them that lesson, and they go back and teach their people on a Sunday. When they finish, they come back to him again. He teaches them, and they go back to wherever they came from to teach. We supplied him with some Bibles to give to this man, because he alone cannot do it. This is Jonas sitting in the middle there with his congregation. These people need a church building. And through the Legacy Fund, we are putting up a building for them. Yes. Look at this. And look at this. This ongoing. When you look at the map of Benin, it's like a key. It's on the screen. Down south is where our school is located. But right now, I've covered almost the whole country with churches. And these are the places that we are putting up the new buildings for the churches that are there. Now we've got some priorities. They are not very big. Bibles. Bibles. When I was here last year, we received some funds, and I went back to Benin. I went to the bookshops and started negotiating for Bibles, because we said we want to buy in large quantities, so they should give us a good price. And the Bible Society is giving us 1 Bible for $8, which they've given us 20% discount on the Bibles. So we become their biggest customer as the prices are good, better than buying in the bookshops. We've provided Bibles, 10,000 Bibles, to preachers in almost 5 different nations. And we bought Bibles in different dialects. In Benin, where I live and I work, they have 72 dialects. And they wanted the Bibles in their local dialect. Most places, they wanted the Bible in their local dialects, because that's what is their heart language. We provided those Bibles to those people. But sometimes, all that we did was just like a drop in the ocean. It's not enough. So as I'm back to the United States, I'm pleading for some donations so that we can buy Bibles to go and give to the people who will use them, and through that, we believe they will be saved. Okay. I want to end this with a devotion. And this devotion is taken from Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than we ask or think, according to the power that works within us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Sometimes in our weaknesses, we limit God. We limit what God can do in our lives. Sometimes, even we trust in God, we trust in the medical doctors more than we trust in God. I remember one time we had a visitor from the United States, and he got sick. Whilst we were gathered around him, we were praying, he took out his medical insurance card. We were praying and we were praying until he recovered. And he said, I've learned a lesson. Back home I trusted in God. But if I'm sick, 911 is my prayer. But God is able to do more than we ask or think of him. He could use the 911 to save us and heal us. But the glory must go to him. The glory must go to him. The power of God that works within us is our faith. And faith is something that we've not seen, but we believe it. It's the evidence of things we've not seen, but that we believe. Sometimes our faith fails us. We ask, where is God when this happened to me? Where is God when I'm